Welcome to the last lesson of Intro to Swift Protocol. Well, in this lesson, we're going to use a delegate pattern, but you'll let the secretary talk back to the CEO. So let's get started. Welcome to Data Source and part of the protocol and programming in Swift. So in the previous lesson, we talked about how one object may communicate to the second object from first view controller to second view controller. However, it's not fair. Here's why. Because, well, in the past, the CEO is only able to give a lot of work to the secretary, but secretary is not able to talk back to the CEO saying that, hey, you got too much work, please leave me alone. You want to say some sort of words like that to the CEO if you're not happy about the situation, you should be able to do that. Well, data source allows you to do that. The data source provides bidirectional communication. It's fancy terms. I just wanted to use it to sound smarter. Just nothing more than talking back to the CEO. Okay, you talk to the parents, and you talk back to your parents, something like that. Okay, so the purpose of that data source is to communicate backward from the delegate to the delegator, from second VC to first VC. Well, the steps are quite similar, so there's nothing crazy differences what we've done in the last lesson, but there's a difference in the example I'm going to use when it comes to UIKit. So let's do something what we've done in the previous lesson, which is simply designing a pass data delegate. We're going to design protocol. Everything should be identical. I'm going to use the identical example. But in this case, you want to have a string right here, okay? Well, we're going to see what's happening. We'll discover what would happen down the road. That's it. You have a string, and this... Well, just wait for me. And we're going to design delegator. And first VC contains this optional property of delegate. And you need to do, and now, same thing. If you executed the delegate pass data, you can have it nil because you have not assigned a delegate. So you're going to assign the delegate with something that confirms to the pass data delegate, okay? So now we're going to design the second view controller, also known as a secretary, also known as a receiver, also known as a delegate. And in this case, we're going to have a class called second VC, and since it confirms the pass data, it has to confirm the pass data delegate, so you're going to have pass data function for right there. But in this case, you're going to have returns right there, return value, which is string. But let's try to do something like this. The CEO gave me data, and also you are going to return I'm too tired. You'll see how everything fits together when we decided to execute that delegate method behalf. So now, let's say you want to return something like I'm too tired, okay? Well, just bear with me for now. We're going to see how everything fits together. So now create two objects, first VC, second VC. Everything should be identical as what we've done in the past, okay? And let's assign a delegate. First VC.delegate equals self second view controller. And then now let's attempt to call the first the delegate method, which is pass data, right, like this. First VC delegate, you're running pass data function method. You're sending a bunch of contract, okay? But here's a interesting part. Now what's happening is when you execute this function block, you know that this function actually returns what? Returns string. Is return I'm too tired, okay? So you may actually store to a constant, to a variable like that, and that's it. You made a bunch of contract. Now if you print message, you may print message like that. Optional I'm too tired. Yeah, it's going to be optional because anything that comes after the optional chaining, you're going to be optional value, right? Yes, right there, I'm too tired. This is a message that you've got from the second view controller. That's it. That's what data source is. Data source is not really something, it's just a fake name, all right? Delegate, the data source, those are just fake name for this phenomenal. Data source is nothing more than returning something to this delegate, okay? Yeah, I have to use that word. I don't exactly know what else I can use. Well, data source is nothing more than talking back to the CEO. Okay, that's how I'm going to describe it. Delegate is nothing more than delegate pattern is nothing more than talking from the CEO to secretary. All right, you get the point. Okay, hopefully I'm making sense. Again, if you're confused, I'm always available in Slack, Udemy. Just reach out. Call me up through my phone. I will pick up the phone. Anyway, so now let's talk about the practical aspect of data source. Where is it used in iOS development? Well, you probably already used it many times. You have to use it when it comes to when you're working with table. So for example, let's say identical stuff. You have a Bob View controller, and now you want to confirm to UI table view delegate UI table view UI table view. Table view delegate, but it's not delegate data source. Data source is nothing more than protocol. Okay, so in this case, you can say pass data delegate. So if that contains return value, you can call it data source. You can call it this way. Doesn't matter how you call it. You may if their function that returns something, then you may use a data source like that. Okay. The data source is part of the delegate pattern. Okay. Got a lot of errors because you're not confirmed to data source protocol. So let's now confirm to data source protocol. But before we do that, let's make an object with var table view, and then you want to do that right there. Table view.delegate, which is a property, optional property you want to assign to self. Well, if this doesn't make sense right now, please go back to the previous lesson. Again, data source is nothing more than a property that confirms to UI table view delegate data source. But UI table view delegate source contains protocols, so contains protocols that you have to use. There are two functions that you have to use. If you go here, jump to definition, there are two, which is this method that you have to use. Number of rows actually makes sense. You gotta have, when you're working table, you want to make sure provide how many rows are there, and also you want to provide cell. So how does a cell look like? Is it brown? Is it black? What's the size of the cell? But the rest is actually optional. You can use it, but but two functions above, you have to use it. So how do you know which was optional? Well, there's right there. Just if it's optional, you don't have to confirm to it. But if anything without the optional keyword, then you gotta have that method available for you. So the first function I'm gonna use is number of rows in section, and just return something, 2000. So what's happening is, so table view is actually running this function, right? Behalf of data source is actually running this function right there. But this view controller is actually returning something, returning 2000. So this 2000, the value is used within table view. Okay, used within the table view. So you may, table view definitely contains a lot of methods and properties and methods and functions. That it takes that 2000 and it works with it. It does a lot of its own implementation. I don't exactly know. I don't even know because UIKit is not open source. We have no control over. But what I can tell you is Bob View controller, returns 2000, and that UI table takes that 2000 value and it goes through its own customization, creating view. I don't exactly know. Creates views, creates a bunch of. It's like a factory, right? And we just trust the Apple engineers that it works. All right. That is kind of the downside of working with framework is sometimes you just have to trust people's work, right? And seems like it's been working, so we just trust them. Okay, so now there's one more method you have to work with, which is a cell for row at. So you want to make sure to define the cell in its row. So all I'm gonna do is return UI table view cell right there. So default style. With the identifier cell, there's no size to it, there's no background color, but just return this just to show you the example. Okay, so again, these are methods that are called from the table view. Okay, they're called, but when it's called by the table view, it actually returns 2000. 2000 is a value defined from the Bob View controller object, and then 2000, the UI table view takes that 2000, and then it generate 2000 views for you guys and appear on the view controller, or appear on the object itself. Okay, that's it. So what are some examples in the iOS development? Well, there's a UI application, use a delegate. Well, this is the delegate pattern that UIKit likes to use. UI application is use a delegate pattern. I'm not going to talk about it. For example, all I can tell you is when your app launches, it runs the delegate function, and well, I'm not going to talk about it in this course. Let's not talk about it. So we talked about UI table view, UI collection view. They both use delegate as well as data source pattern to communicate back and forth between one object to the other. And there's one for text field. They all kinds. Probably every UI object uses the delegate pattern, I think. Okay, so now you understand the fundamentals, how everything fits together, and you understand the delegate as well as delegate the data source pattern. Yeah, so when you're working with the teammates, you can tell, hey, Bob the developer said delegate pattern is nothing more than sending data from the secretary, the CEO to the secretary, and data source is nothing more than sending data from secretary to the CEO. Okay, you know what to do. You know the drill. Or you can just simply say, hey, take this course. So it's up to you guys. Hopefully, you guys learned something new with me. It's important that you cover the fundamentals, and once you understand the fundamentals, it's all about application. It's easier. You just go online and read their code and just copy paste. Because if you notice or not, these are just frameworks returning 2000, and when you return this 2000 value, the table view does its own work, and I don't even know what the heck is going on. But just as long as you understand the ecosystem, how everything fits together. For example, when you're coding, you don't look at the tree, you look at the entire forest, you look at the entire mountain. And as long as you're able to recognize a pattern through looking through the mountain, you don't really have to look at the tree. Okay, you don't really have to. Sometimes you do have to, but when it comes to learning new platform, for example, if I were to learn Android, if I were to learn Windows application development, they use a delegate pattern up there, Yeah, but those are, I'm not looking at trees, I'm just looking at those patterns, those forests that are mountain, and that's all you need to do when it comes to development. And of course, you got to know the details later if you are serious about building apps. But at first, it's all about getting the fundamentals and seeing the mountains out there. Okay. So see you guys in the next lesson. In this chapter, I've covered the fundamentals of protocols, how to use the syntax of it, and how it is used when it comes to communication between object to the other. Well, I think that was good enough for this course, and see you guys in the next lesson. And keep coding. Things will get tougher and tougher. Let's go. That's it. Data source pattern is nothing more than part of the delegate pattern, but it just contains a function that returns something. So when it returns something, it's literally talking back to the CEO here, right? Just like that, the UI collection, the UI table view, you probably seen like number of index in row, you return like 30. What's happening is you're sending that number 30 back to the CEO, which are also collection view as well as the table view. Okay? Hopefully you now understand the delegate and data source pattern. I'm not sure how many people really understand the delegate and data source pattern, but what I can tell you is most people, what they do is when they first start learning about delegate, they simply write down table view.self delegate equals self, because they think that, oh, this is part of rules that we go through. But it's not really the rule, it's the pattern you gotta understand. So if you know about the pattern now, good for you. Since you finished this entire chapter, let me talk a little bit more in the next video.